Hey guys, LevelCap here, and Modern Warfare's mid-season patch has finally arrived. Infinity Ward have been teasing some major balance changes with this patch, and I'm happy to report, on paper at least, some of the more popular weapons have been adjusted to be less powerful. There's also a new sniper rifle, Warzone gadget, and a bunch of other changes to talk about. Before I dive in, just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying the Warzone coverage, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Now let's start with the good news. The Grau has finally been nerfed. This assault rifle has become the dominant weapon in Warzone due to its absurdly low recoil and good damage over range. The nerfs are on the minor side, but the overall effect is about a 15 to 20% decrease in damage over range. It's also been made less accurate when using the Archangel barrel. The recoil and side-to-side wobble have been increased to make it less of a laser rifle and more of an actual gun. The end result is a mixed bag of a nerf. It certainly doesn't feel as effective as it was before, but the Grau is still very much a powerful weapon that excels in Warzone. There were a few other notable weapon changes. The AX-50's damage range was increased. The HDR is now a guaranteed one-hit kill to the lower torso at any range. Obviously, this only applies to unarmored targets in Warzone. Any armor should make it at least a two-hit kill. The Kar 98 got a pretty decent buff with faster ADS speed, decreased hipfire speed, and increased damage range. The Mark II carbine has faster movement speed and increased damage range. The Dragunov has also seen some tweaks. It got faster ADS speed and is now a minimum 2-shot to kill weapon. It has faster recoil reset and a quicker rate of fire. With all of these changes, the HDR is probably going to remain the supreme king of sniping, but other long-range weapons should start to feel a bit more competitive. One of the highlights of the weapon changes is that the FAL can now one-hit kill to the head in close range. I doubt this will be super useful in practice, but I'll be testing it out to see what the range is like. The AK-47 got a buff to its ADS speed, making it a little snappier, and the CR-56 AMAX's damage range has been decreased. The last major changes were made to the MP5. Its damage range for both standard and 10mm ammo has been reduced. The bonus long-range damage of the 10mm rounds has also been reduced, and it's been given more recoil. You'll probably feel these changes more in standard multiplayer than in Warzone, but just keep in mind that the MP5 is now a more close quarters weapon than it's been in the past. Now, as for the new sniper rifle, it's called the Rytec AMR, and it seems like it's designed to be something of an anti-vehicle weapon. Kind of makes sense given AMR stands for anti-material rifle, but what makes it effective is the different ammo types available for it. You can equip either explosive or thermite rounds. These have reduced bullet velocity but do way more damage to vehicles. In a pinch, the explosive rounds are a pretty decent alternative to an RPG, but don't expect to blast away vehicles with a single hit. Now, with standard ammo, the Rytec performs on par with other high damage sniper rifles. Now, of course, the big headline for this update is that Quads now supports 200 players in Warzone. This is a very significant bump up from 150, and while you'd think it would have a significant impact on the flow of a match, in a few matches I played last night, it didn't seem to make much of a difference at all. Verdansk is an absolutely massive map, and players tend to spread across it pretty evenly. You might be a little more likely to run into third-party teams with increased player count, but I wouldn't say the pacing or gunfights felt dramatically different. Now, what does feel different, however, are the changes to the Gulag. People seem to be a bit divided by this change. The weapon rotations in the Gulag are now semi-auto rifles, sniper rifles, and melee weapons. When the patch went live, I skimmed through the notes and didn't see this change. Needless to say, it was quite jarring getting into a Gulag match and realizing that all I had was a throwing knife. I've really been enjoying the automatic weapons rotation because it made Gulag matches faster and less campy, but now it's gone in the exact opposite direction. It's not to say it's inherently bad, but I think it's such a jarring change of pace that many players might not like it. Another potential sore spot is the performance. In my limited testing last night, performance was all over the place, especially in the 200 player quads lobbies. My FPS feels relatively stable around 100 to 120 range, but it dropped to well below 60 at some points. Frame pacing was also all over the place, so even when I was getting 60 FPS, it felt much slower. Now, certainly some of this could be a little bit more related to just early patch hiccups and whatnot, but to be honest, honest, performance in Warzone has always been quite messy. If it's not your own frame rate struggling, then it's the servers. Considering the going rumors that this year's Call of Duty is tied into Warzone, I really hope Infinity Ward can nail down these hiccups. There were some other gameplay tweaks made to Warzone. The gas mask will now crack when you take damage near or in the circle. Spawning under the map after winning the Gulag has been fixed. Spawning out of bounds when you died out of bounds has also been fixed. The audio for supply choppers has been lowered so you can actually hear your squad mates better. Up to 3 precision airstrikes can be called in at once as long as they're not too close together. This has been a pretty big issue with Warzone. Sometimes when you need to call in your airstrike and it seems like nothing's in the skies, it still won't deploy. This tweak should make that way less common. The final addition to Warzone is a new supply run contract and spotter scope loot item. Grabbing the supply run contract will mark a nearby buy station with reduced pricing for a limited time. The spotter scope is a reusable optic that works like a sniper rifle, but without the glint. Now, in standard multiplayer, there's a new map called Cheshire Park. It's an evening map and it's pretty decent overall. To me, nothing really stands out about it as being amazing or awful, and of course that may change over time when I get to know it a little better. So overall, what's my take on the mid-season update? Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. The 200-player quads is a nice addition to the game, but it really didn't feel all that different from the 150-player lobbies we've had for months. In fact, if somebody just told me I was in a 150-player game, I probably would have believed him. The nerf to the Grau is pretty exciting, but in practice, it's still one of the best weapons you can equip, and people are still using it like crazy. In many cases, the meta will change naturally over time as other weapons become more widely used, but the Grau is still king of the pack as a jack-of-all-trades weapon. It's hard to beat even with the nerfs. I am really interested to see how the changes to the FAL and the Kar 98 affect the game though. I wouldn't expect them to become the new meta weapons, but they should be a lot more viable now, especially in Warzone. The change to the Gulag weapon rotations is probably the most divisive thing in the update. I prefer the automatic weapons, but you might feel differently. Either way, I think maybe a little bit more variety could go a long way. One thing that I think Infinity Ward really need to take a look at for the future update is Warzone's reliance on skill-based matchmaking. Now, I think it goes without saying that as a game gets older, the people playing the game get better at it. And I also don't think that skill-based matchmaking is the bane of every multiplayer game's existence. Skill-based matchmaking is a good way of making every match just slightly more consistent. But in Warzone, my experience in the past few months has been a bit too consistent. Gunfights start to feel like you're fighting mirror images of yourself. Everyone has great aim, is using on meta weapons, picking fights they can win, ignoring ones they can't. It generally feels like I'm always playing players at the same skill level as me, with little to no deviation depending on the match. That being said, there's of course certain fights that I'll win without breaking a sweat, but those are pretty rare. I've even been playing a lot of solo matches too, and the camping in them has gotten kind of unreal. At some point, I do hope that Infinity Ward gives us the option to matchmake outside of skill-based matchmaking entirely. If that means putting in a ranked mode and having a handful of casual playlists, then so be it. It would just be nice to not always feel like I'm in a sweaty game. Other YouTubers, notably Jack Frags, Drifter, and Exclusive Ace, have all done pretty compelling studies showing that your skill has a mild impact on the average KD of players that you're matched against. It's not like every player in every lobby has an identical skill level to you, but the chances of significant disparities between players are evened out. The problem with these studies, though, is that we don't have any data to compare it against. As far as anyone knows, skill-based matchmaking is always on, and it's consistently being tweaked to make the experience as consistent as possible. Personally, I really like the variety of a large player game. You got some noobs, you got some pros, you got everything in between, and it just adds to the different kinds of playstyles you're going to go up against. Without Infinity Ward really releasing all the data that we might want to study skill-based matchmaking, we'll never really have a definite answer as to whether or not skill-based matchmaking is a good thing or not. But for the here and now, I would certainly like to at least try playing without it to see what that's like. Anyway, guys, that's about all I have for you today with Warzone's mid-season update. If there's anything interesting you noticed with this update that I didn't cover here, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap signing off.